Okay, today Gary Graham, one of our members here, Forged and Fire winner, is going to do a demo for his Damascus right now. And he really makes nice Damascus. So it'll be nice to see exactly what he does. You've already got your mic, so there you go.
All right, thanks, Bo. Can you hear me? Can anybody hear me? Okay. All right, real quick, what I'm going to be demoing today is what I like to call the watermelon pattern. And basically, this horizontal pattern, to me, it looks like the side of a watermelon. And from this point, when you get it in the billet of straight lines or horizontal lines, you can manipulate those lines and turn them into different things, such as a shark's tooth pattern or stuff like that. Some examples of blades that I've made starting with this process are back there on the table. And this knife here, I forged it out and finished it this morning. Will be in the iron in the hat today. So that, along with a do-it-yourself kit, and what I used for this knife, or this Damascus yesterday, was 25 layers of 1060 and 15N20. And I purposely did it all with recycled material just because I had a call earlier in the week to do an interview about why is it important to preserve old crafts, whether it be painting or forging or knife making or whatever. And one of the highlights was being able to take material that was basically worth pennies in the scrapyard and turn it into something that you can, people want and you can resell. So both the do-it-yourself kit will be in the iron in the hat today, and this blade, along with any blades we make during the demo today.
You said
1060.
1060?
Now, 1060, one of our members, John Taylor, works at a bakery up in Northeast Tennessee, and they had a huge oven band that went around their bakery oven, and they tested it. They had to replace it, and it came out to be 1060. So John brought me down like a 5 to 8 sheet of this stuff, and I wanted to reuse it into make a quality product here. And then the 15 and 20 used for this blade, it came from sawmill blades, and you'll see it a lot of times at the like at the AFC conference and the Bats and Bladesmith Symposium. We'll be selling saw blades, and that's what we're using here, and that's the shiny part of this knife. So you want you to pass that around. So what we're doing basically, if you notice, the layers of steel are stacked, they're rotated at 1060, 15 and 20, 1060, 15 and 20. And for this pattern, once I get a good forge weld in the entire billet, I turn it on its edge, and that becomes my flat from now on. So if you picture taking a paperback book and squishing it sideways, that's what we're doing to get the horizontal lines in this billet.
How many layers you start with?
25 layers on this billet. So, and that's, in the do-it-yourself kit, you got 25 layers. So do you have any questions before we get started hammering? All right. Right now, on my initial weld sets, I make sure that I'm barely tapping that billet. If you smack it too hard, you'll blow those layers apart and you'll ruin your billet. So I'll run 2 or 3 iterations of just barely tapping that billet, reducing the thickness of it, and getting a good forge weld. Then I'll rotate it on its side here, put it in a vise with a grinder, and I'll cut off or grind off all those welds that are in that billet, so I don't get that mild steel from the MIG mixed in with my billet.
Is that about the average time you normally
Yes.
do it?
I don't want to do it a lot on my initial welds. Typically at home I set those welds in a press, but our press is all the way back in the corner, or Ronnie's press is back in the corner, So I practiced yesterday making sure I can set these welds on the hammer and not mess it up. So
Gary, what kind of flux are you using?
I'm using, I start out my initial weld, I soak my billet in kerosene, and then I'll come back after the first heat, I'll flux it with borax, or 20 mule team borax you get from Walmart or maybe even dollar store. So I forgot to put my flux on, so I'm gonna add it this time. Let it heat a little bit.
Is there any secret to keep the borax from heating up your bricks?
Not really, they eat up the bricks. Well, oh, the question there was, is there any secrets to keep the borax from eating up the bricks? And I haven't been able to find it. So, maybe if you use hard brick or bubble alumina, it may prevent that. But usually what I do, I just plan on relining my forge 2 or 3 times a year.
It still eats up, but that's better than just the raw brick.
I can hear you, John.
But bubble aluminum and stuff like that are better than just the raw. You have to keep replacing that too.
Yes. Yeah, so about anything you use a flux with, it's hard on the inside of your forge. Doug, get a question? Just checking. Grab that. All right, so what I'm doing now is I'm grinding off the welds and dropping stuff. All right, try not to get hot sparks on y'all. What? Okay. Make sure you got eyeglasses on, or safety glasses. You're up here close. I need to put it on. All right, real quick, when you do your billet stack up, you're not going to get everything perfect. So after you set your welds initially, when you're grinding these welds or the MIG welds off, gives you a chance to grind off the excess edges as well and line them up so you don't get cold chucks in the face of your billet. So, ideally you want it to be all thin, such as this. I don't know if you see that right there? So, okay, so I've got the welds pretty much cleaned off on both sides, which in the next heat or two, this will become the face, and then the flats will be the sides again. There we go.
shoot? Just randomly? Corner?
Well, I mean, what, doing it on the side, I'm just doing it squared up on the side or on a 90.
Yeah.
And, I'll continue to mash that out till I get down to the part where I need to fuller it with the fullering tool under the hammer.
Okay.
That'll spread it out so I have something wide enough for a blade. I'm ready for next time. While we're waiting on it to heat back up, do we have any questions or comments, complaints? Don't sit in the front when I'm grinding type stuff.
Yeah. Gary, when you're layering this up, does it matter what order you layer them in? Do you have an outside layer or
I usually use the tool steel as my outside layer,
layer? Okay.
but realistically, when you start grinding it and cleaning all that stuff up, as thin as these layers are, that it's going to be intermingled with the 15 and 20, or maybe even ground away. Now, something to note on Damascus, when you're trying to develop a pattern, I have a habit I'd like to forge to finish, or try to, but that's not always a good thing with Damascus. A lot of times when you start forging, you distort that pattern. You don't get all the benefits for it because you're just squishing it out and distorting it. So I know George Easel does a really good job on some of his Turkish twist, and he starts grinding around 3/8 to 1/2 inch thick. And that way, as you go through those layers, you get all kinds of different patterns in it. Where yesterday, that knife that I passed around earlier, I forged it to finish, and you kind of see it's just swelled. Is that me or you? Okay. Just kind of move the pattern around like the side of a watermelon. You're not even going to talk to her? I'll let her know. And the main thing is, when you switch it, what was that? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
When you turn that billet on its side, you're creating a shearing force with that billet. So you have to be very conservative on how hard you hit it initially till you get it started to reducing the size, which strengthens your weld. But if you start hitting it right away at a side angle, you can shear those layers apart. So you'll see I'm about as conservative doing it on the side initially as I was setting the welds. I've heard the DeRosiers, when they did a demo down at Batson, their rule of thumb is you got to reduce your stock by 50% before they're confident that you got a good solid forge weld all the way through it.
If you're using the press, when you turn it up on the side, the force that you're using, is it similar to like you said with the hammer, where you bite it up on it?
You mean if you turn it edgeways and under the press? Yeah, it's basically the same thing. You're still reducing that pattern down or that billet down. The press, it's kind of a double-edged sword. You got a lot of power in one section that you can really mess up a good piece of work if you're not careful. But at the same time, it sucks the heat out of your billet really fast because those dies are on it all the time, and could create a problem for shearing if you get too aggressive with it.
You still got to shear.
Yes,
Possibility.
absolutely. Yeah. So we get this thing back to temperature. It'll go pretty quick from there as far as drawing the billet out and get it on its side. But I got to make sure it's really hot up to forge welding temperature before I start doing it. We'll give it about another minute. That way the handle's good and hot and I won't be able to hold on to it. What? Yeah, that's where I hold on to the billet, try to stick it in the water, and drop the whole billet in the water. I try to work it hot as much as I can so I don't have to worry about shearing off the layers.
If the layers start to separate, how do you correct that?
I usually take a chisel, split them in half, and just modify whatever I'm making.
You can't put plugs in there and redo it.
You know, if you try to fix a shear or a D-line in the middle of a billet, there's a good chance it'll still be there and you'll find it in your final grinding. So if you screw up in the beginning, you'll just scrap it or modify what you're doing. So a lot of times if it shears, then I can take a chisel and continue to split it, separate it, and I got two choices then. I can just go along with that part of my billet, or I can clean them up and start all over, tack weld them together and reforge them together. But it's trying to fix it on the go. I haven't had very good success with it. The question was, if I have a shear or a D-lam on my billet, is there a way to fix it in process or while you're forging it? And you know, the best results I've had is either split it in half at that shear, or abandon it and go on and make another billet, because you'll do your best to get a good solid forge weld in there, but it may not show up till you're doing your final grinding. So if you notice, I'm continuously rotating my billet as I do it. And that's the intent is try to keep it square as I can while still spreading out the edge grain. And the reason I do it, I keep rotating it, is if you only hammer on the edge grain, your billet will have a tendency to either bow out or deform on those edges, and it bites you later on when you're trying to forge a blade out of it. I couldn't hear you.
You said deforming it on the edges, a rounding effect, and then starting to deform.
Well, when I try to keep my billet as square as possible while I'm forging it out, and if you just hammer on one side, it'll bow those sides out, and you know, you'll lose some of your material or the ability to use it. All right, so my layers, this is your edge grain that I mashed down from the flat. I started rounding a little bit because now what I'm going to do is take the fuller and start spreading that billet out to make it wider. All right, so under the power hammer, what I'm going to use to fuller out this billet is just this little top tool that I think Uncle Bill made this top tool. I got it out of when I got his stuff in his hammer. For about the first 2 inches, I'll gradually work my way up the billet until I get it wide enough for knife stock. All right.
I think I missed, but do you have a mark on your handle somewhere to let you know which way the layers are running?
No, the question was, do I have a mark on my handle or some directional? Can I tell which direction the billet is pointing? With the billet, the way I'm doing it now, when it comes out of the forge, I can see those layers on its edge. But now if I was doing a canister or something I couldn't see the way the pattern was working, I would put a T-bar in there for direction control.
You could only have either that press you have or power hammer. Which one?
Hammer.
Hammer.
I say that because I had a hammer a long time before I had a press, so I got used to using it. But the press is valuable for a lot of things. You know, I've got different dies that I can put in there for patterning Damascus. I can square up my billets. I can set my welds with it. It's quiet. So it depends on where you live at as well. So if I was in town or somewhere, the press definitely. But you know, fortunately I don't live in town. I'll continue to work this fuller all the way up to the billet so it all comes out like that. And then we'll determine if we're going to try to grind into it to make a pattern or alter a pattern, or we make it cut for different patterns. Starting to perspire. Now I know guys that they have the same kind of dies under a power hammer that they can pattern their steel with. You know, it's whatever you get used to and whatever you practice with. You know, it's a power hammer or a press is a lot better than a hammer and elbow and an anvil. All right, I need some questions or comments. Nope. I start with propane, and I just I stick with it. It's clean, it's fast, and it's for me it's good. When I try coal, I usually end up burning up a lot of steel, turning good steel into scrap metal, things of that nature. The most elusive thing in the shop, the water bottle.
Does the sound that the metal gives off as you're pounding it when it gets kind of like that higher pitch, does that mean it's cooling down?
Yes. Now, the question is, the sound that I hear in the billet when I'm working it, kind of what does that indicate? So when I'm setting my welds, I can tell at the change of the tone of the way the hammer's hitting, if my welds are set or not. It tells me to go on to the next step of whatever I'm going to do. The same thing with getting cold. So if your welds get set, you got a better, more solid billet, it gives off a different tone. If my steel starts to get cold, I can hear that pick up as well in the hammer dice, or the way it hits.
Yeah, I can notice the difference in the tone.
Yeah. So all I'm doing now is just straighten up my billet. That way I don't have to chase that shape around. So what we're going to do with part of this billet, we're going to forge a blade out of it just like it is, just like the blade that's on the table. What we're going to do with another part of this billet is we're going to cut diagonal grooves into it, almost like a ladder pattern, but at an angle, to see how we can manipulate that pattern into something different than just straight lines. So that knife I did yesterday, it had been a while since I worked with this pattern. I ground all my lines vertical, like you would do a ladder. But if you got horizontal lines and you cut vertically and you forge it back flat again, all you're doing is putting those horizontal lines back in the space. So it didn't do anything. So then I remember you're supposed to do them at an angle. Nothing we can't work around, but you can see the dark area right there, that little slit. So I had a D-lam there, but we can work around it with this. Might even be able to grind it out. Right there is where I've got a D-lam and a really hot handle. Handles get a little too hot to hold on to. All right, as we make these blades, do we have a preference between full tang and hidden tang? No preference?
I like the full thing.
Full tang? Okay. We'll make it happen.
So Gary, since it is Damascus, how close, dimensional wise, how close to knife shape are you going to actually forge?
Well, for the one that I'm going to forge out as far as the full tang one on the first knife, it'll be pretty close. I mean, it'll be within probably a nickel's thickness on the edge. And we're going to use Travis's induction forge here today to heat treat them. So they'll be heat treated. So when you take them home, all you'll need to do is put them in the oven I use 400 degrees for 2 hours to do a temper on it, and then it'll be ready to put in handles. My handy helper's not here today.
So you set the temperature on the induction forge, what you want to do?
On the induction forge, I'm going to use it for thermocycling and heat treating.
What do you need help with?
Pardon?
What do you need help with?
Just I had Jeff here last time doing the on and off, and I kept calling him Hammer, which is my dog's name, so he got offended. It's stretching out long enough now that it's going out the back of the forge, so I forgot and left my tips a little bit cold right now. So what I'm going to do is, as I shape this full tang, I'm going to start with the handle first, and I'll rough shape it out, and then work my way up to where I start the blade, get the handle shape, and then I'll know where to cut off my blade, or the billet to make my blade. Not yet. Any questions? Comments?
What width or thickness do you get your billet to before you start forging the blade?
Oh, for the thickness? I'll go down about a 1/4 inch. Now, and what I'll do is the tang will have a partial taper to it. So I'll make it, it'll be thin, trying to work my way up to that diamond shape. In a blade, when you look at it from the back, you want thin, the reconcile area will be the thickest area, then taper back down to your tip. So it gives that oblong diamond look to it. No, no, I'm not a sword maker. I just had to make a sword, so.
Got that out of your system.
Yeah, it's I'm out of the sword making, desire. So I got the one they kept and the one that I messed up on Sunday that I had to make a new one for Sunday evening and Monday, and so it's hanging on the wall now. It's
You made 2.
actually I made 4, but there was a lot of character flaws to a lot of them, or character marks, you might say. One, too. Hey, Travis. You have a grinder with a cutoff wheel? Probably right here. I got it that way. It ain't throwing hot sparks towards somebody. I've got to cut off part of that handle. Had a D-lamp. Had to get rid of it. What was that?
How easy is it to overheat the thing?
Really, if you're using a propane forge, it's pretty hard to mess it up. I've got a thermocouple that I run in my forge so I can tell what temperature I'm working at. Usually I'll build a Damascus. I like to set my welds at 2350 and then work it 2250 to 2300.
So that board stays pretty close to that temperature?
Yeah, whatever you set it at. Now, we don't have a thermocouple on this one, so I'm just trying to go by sight at what the colors are. But, you know, on a ribbon burner, you can actually get it hot enough to melt steel. Oh, yeah. But now, right now, what you got is both steels used in this blade are high carbon steel. So you're getting carbon migration over, you know, through all the steel. It's not like you're using wrought iron and it's pulling that carbon out of it. So, you know, the blade will maintain a good quality as long as you got steel to work with. So as I'm working my handle, I use the top tool to put it in the finger soil or the finger area, and then we'll start working the blade from here to about right here, which should make about a 4-inch hunting style knife. And then we'll stretch this out longer because we got a lot of steel to work with there.
Pick up that at the end of that fillet that you cut off and explain why you cut all that off.
It's hot right now. It's hot right now.
With a pair of tongs. Lay it on the end.
All right, so earlier I had to cut off, I had a cold shut developed in the layers right at the end, which is pretty common, unfortunately. But you get too aggressive on it, and it started splitting my handle back here. So the easiest way to rectify that, we asked about cold shuts, is I cut it off and threw it to the side. Had this been in a layered billet where I could take a chisel and split them apart, I'd have probably done that and turned around and forged 2 small blades out of this. But that's why I did that. you want to. It's hot, so drop it in Doug's
You
lap.
always forge handle at the end and then blade forge it?
Yes, well, not always. It just depends on what I'm doing. The question is, do I always forge the handle first and then come back into the blade? The answer is no. But I found on a full tang knife, it's easier to forge that handle out, get the shape I want and the length, and then go to the blade. Because a lot of times if you go to the blade first, you'll end up with not enough material to finish your handle. So it works out better for me that way. All right, you can see I'm starting to shape my handle. Got a little bit of spot there for a handle swell. Not yet. Mess up the blade a little bit. Okay. All right, so what I've done right now is I've got the basic form of my handle. Probably a little bit long, but I can adjust that. This blade looks pretty short, but if you look at it sideways, we got about a ½ inch up in some of this area, so there's a lot of steel there. So we'll forge a blade from that on out. I use the angle grinder with a cutoff wheel, mainly because it's cleaner and it doesn't create stress when I'm trying to cut these layers the way they're forged. So we'll do this one as a full tang. We'll probably do the other one as a hidden tang, and that way you'll be able to see both types. How many of y'all have your knife grinder or have a knife grinder at home? All right. How many of you got variable speed? All right. Variable speed is very important because it gives you a lot more options on attachments. So the Ameribraid, which is this grinder's an Ameribraid, it's a good grinder. They make a rotary platen attachment that goes onto it. Basically, it looks like this, but it's got a rubber belt that goes around it. Now the importance, and you got to run it at a slow speed. And you got to run it about 30% of what you normally run a full speed grinder at. And why that's important is when you're grinding blades and you get above a 180 or so, you start getting belt bump on a hard platen. So belt bump, it's like it's where a glue joint is. So the finer the belt, like the J series belts, on a hard platen, it'll start bouncing. Every time it comes to that glue joint, it'll bounce. It'll make little marks in your blades. With that rotary platen, you can slow your speed down, and you go up to a 5 micron belt, and use it on there. You can come out with a finished blade right off the grinder.
The one that I've got is fixed speed. But on the face of that plat, I've got a piece of ceramic material, aftermarket for me. I haven't had any, I've gone down to like 600-800 grit on it. I don't, that's making a difference for them, but I haven't had that problem.
Well, that's good, and that's a good tip.
Of course, on the other hand, I don't think mine is turned as fast as that either.
That blade that's going to be an hour and a half, the one I passed around, I finished ground that this morning to a 45 micron, or not a 45 micron, a Trizac belt, a Trizac A45. I don't know what that is. I guess about 400 grit or so. But it comes straight off the grinder, straight in the etch. There was no hand sanding or anything else to it. And when you got 8 or 10 blades to get out, hand sanding is a great big time consumer. So if you got an attachment that can help you, that's important, and it's a time saver. The other thing you can use on these is a small wheel grinder or adapter. Hand me that blade back there, the full tang.
I've got a ceramic platen on mine. I still get bump.
You get a bump? Yeah. So
For me to justify buying one.
Another attachment that you can buy for your belts is a small wheel attachment. And what that small wheel does, you got to run it at a slower speed, about half speed, but it allows you to get in there and put nice finger guards in and do shapes. You can do file work on the back with it, both sides, and then go to a Dremel and you're done with your file work. There's a lot of advantages to a grinder that's adjustable speed. So if you're thinking about buying one, it's well worth the option of having the adjustable speed.
I have a question. I don't know about where could I put a dimmer switch in between that and my grinder motor?
No, I don't think so.
It would burn my motor up?
Yeah. Yeah, so most variable speed grinders I've looked at, they've got a 3-phase motor. It runs through a variable speed controller, which converts single phase power, 220 single phase, into 3-phase. So it runs that 3-phase motor, and it's adjustable that way, and it doesn't hurt the motor. I think if you tried something like on an AC motor with a dimmer switch, you'll probably end up burning up your motor. And Doug could probably better answer that. Our motor man's not here today, so.
What happens when you vary the speed on the AC motor through a variable frequency dial, when you start turning the voltage down to a lower voltage, it increases the frequency of the output, so that the motor still stays as efficient as it always was. As the frequency goes up, the voltage goes down, the speed.
Okay, what we're going to do with this one is we're going to take the angle grinder and cut grooves at an angle in this billet to try to change the pattern the way it flows so it just won't be the straight lines. If I do it correctly, I'm not promising I will, it should look like teeth coming out of the pattern. Great. Okay, we're going to work between heats on this thing right here. There's fire inside my glasses, can't see. All right, what I've done on that side is I've cut grooves at an angle from my horizontal pattern. So when I mash it down and bring those inner layers to the surface, it should give a kind of a zigzag in where those layers are at. I'll do the same thing on the other side, but we got a balancer's time between that knife that's in the forge right now. So what I'm going for on this this blade, it's going to be a kind of a basic drop point. Looks like about a 5.5 inch blade. So if I'm really particular about how the length of my blade is, I'll start from the tip so I can work my way back, get an exact length I want before I stop and go into the handles. But because of the demo today, I'm trying to get it finished looking good, we're going to do it this way. There's no right way or wrong way in making knives or forging knives. It's whatever technique works for you. And you know, I've heard folks say, well, you got to do it this way or you can do it that way. As long as you're getting the end result, do it your way. You know, you can take from a bunch of people's different techniques and develop your own style. Yeah. So what I've done here, it's kind of got the same direction on both sides. That's why I was trying not to mess it up. And then I grind on it from each side about a third of the way through the billet. And then I stagger them. There should be alternating from side to side where the thickness is. Good. Sure are picky. So when you make a pattern by removing material, all you're doing is modifying that pattern to bring those layers underneath to the surface, and that's why it's so. When you're doing a say a 250 layer count billet, and you do a ladder on it, it makes it look like it's just shimmering as you go down it because all those layers are all over the top of the surface.
Terry, is there a possibility of developing a cold shut where you ground those grooves in it?
No, there's always a possibility. I won't say there's not, but that wheel is wide enough that I shouldn't have that problem. Now, that's a good question though. And the question was, is there a chance of developing a cold shut where you grind through those layers? If you use a thin blade like a cutoff wheel or something, most definitely you can develop a cold shut. But using a wide wheel like that 1/4 inch wheel on that grinder, usually it's wide enough and it's not very steep, so it doesn't. You don't have to worry about the cold shuts as bad. So now I'm working on my bevels. Do one side, rotate over, do the other side. So as you see, we're starting from the front. We're reducing that bevel edge or the cutting edge, and we still got about a 1/4 inch on the spine. That's a little crooked now, but we'll straighten that up as we go through forging it. Now, I think Bo mentioned that we got we started a new guild out in Rogersville called the Alabama Custom Knife Makers Guild. We meet in Josh Howard's shop the second Saturday of each month. The next meeting is July 8th. I'll be demonstrating making the kumai, the blades with the copper in it. And along with that, I'll be doing a demo on grinder attachments to show you some of the things that help make my life easier, and some of the things I buy just hoping they'll help make my life easier. So, there's attachments people sell that just kind of like fishing lures. Some lures catch fishermen, some lures catch fish. I try to buy them all.
Wish we could still buy the old-fashioned cherry bomb. Those all catch fish.
I got some. So as I work my blade and I see it, going out of shape in a couple areas like a banana, then I go ahead and I straighten it up. Now I try to keep it straight as I forge the blade. I don't wait till it gets too far out of control to try to fix it. All right, so it's starting to take shape. What's happening is those layers are just kind of bending with the shape of the blade. Maybe. We'll see. All right, so when I cut my billet or a piece of steel that I'm going to forge out into a blade, I usually cut it at an angle. It just makes it that much easier for me to get to my point, and probably one less heat instead of starting from a square bar and trying to forge it into a point. And we'll make another one out of the other piece. Naturally, I put stuff in the wrong spot. So what I did was I initiated my plunge line and the start of my ricasso there by hitting it on the sharp corner of the anvil. And then, like I said, these plunge lines are where I'll start grinding the bevel in with the grinder once we get started. You got a wooden mallet? By the stump? Oh, the stump.
Purpose of the wood mallet is
Hold on. I ain't crying, I'm just happy to be here. All right, that final round or the final 1 or 2 heats, when I'm forging out a blade, I use a wooden mallet. And the purpose of that wooden mallet is it helps straighten up any of your bends or twists or turns, and it doesn't put hammer marks into your blade that you got to grind out later on. So this blade looks a little rough, but we'll go ahead and get ready to grind it here in a little bit. All right. Let's talk about tongs real quick. It's really important, and any blacksmithing, but especially bladesmithing, because you got some thin steels, that you have a set of tongs that captures your work, holds it where it can't get loose. And, you know, you got tongs that hold it like that and you're working under a power hammer. There's no way it can bounce out and burn you or set your shop on fire. I've got several scars on me where I use the wrong tongs. It don't take too many scars for you to realize you need to use the right ones. So these are Tom tongs. Travis makes some tongs that are bladesmith tongs. There's quite a few there, but just use one that holds your work and it won't let it escape while you're hammering on it. The other thing is, if you'll notice when I'm doing my hidden tang, I'm forging out that tang right now. Once I get the tang forged out, then I'll switch over to this smaller set to be able to hold the tang, so it won't bounce around. On a hidden tang, I leave about that much into my handle. You know, there's a 3/4 rule. You're supposed to have a handle through, depending on kind of handle you got. You know, if it's stag, it can be a little bit shorter. If it's wood, it needs to be a little bit longer to support the blade when you're using them. So when I was doing an interview the other day on why it's important to preserve some of the old arts, and one of the questions was, do I try to do I try to modernize my process to make it more efficient and faster? Of course, my initial response is no, I'm still beating on hot steel and stuff. But then yesterday, I was looking around my shop. I got a hydraulic press. I got a power hammer. I got 2 or 3 knife grinders. And I thought, well, yeah, I'm trying to make my shop more efficient. But realistically, and Travis can correct me if I'm wrong, but back when blacksmithing was a major job in any town or settlement, you had 1 or 2 blacksmiths, then you had 4 or 5 helpers. So the blacksmith kind of called the shots and where to strike, and the helpers did all the striking. So I tried to get Doug and Jeff Kelsey to be my strikers, and I decided that a power hammer was a much better investment. So what I'm going to do with this piece right here, I'm going to heat it one more time, flatten it out, and I'm going to grind it from where it's at now and not hammer in the bevel. We'll see how it turns out.
That's a fresh bottle right there.
Thank you. That's about it. I'm waiting. You know, I work a lot better with that. All right. I'm gonna grind that one as it is right now as well. So, right, we turn that forge off. All right, so we're getting ready to start grinding these blades. So anybody in this area back, kind of scoot to the one side or the other, because I'm afraid sparks may hit you. You know, I did come prepared. All right, I got to let them sit a few more minutes because it's a little hot to hold on to right now. You know, as a forge and fire, you're so time restricted. I ended up grinding my blade with a set of welding gloves on. All right. I wear these sleeves because those little sparks that bounce off your arms and stuff. At night, it feels like you got a bad case of the chiggers on your arms. You're there scratching and digging and going on, but it's all the little burns from the sparks. It's also why most of my shirts have holes in it right here. So as I grind the blade, the first thing I'll do is set up the profile on it, get all the bumps and stuff off that I can get. All right, sparks may be coming right here. So, but not until I plug it in. So as I get my bevels ground in, then I'll put it on a magnet. Doug's got the best magnets for this job. I'm just bragging on him. But to kind of flatten up the sides and keep it somewhat parallel. It's hard to get, doing it freehand is almost impossible, but you just do the best you can. So what I'm doing now is shaping the handle.
Will that size will be all right for running that single phase motor?
The wheel this size?
That round wheel that size is okay.
Well, yeah, it doesn't matter what's,
Smaller ones is
it's smaller ones because they have smaller bearings, and you'll burn out the bearings on high speed. Hey, thank you. So what I'm doing now with this 6-inch wheel is I'm shaping this area here so it's not just real bulky in your hand. Thank you, sir. Now, a real quick promotional announcement. Doug does sell these. That's one of his things he sells. So if you need one, it'd be a good time to get it, if he's got them. All right, so shouldn't be too hot. So you can pass that around and you feel what I'm trying to get to in the handle. And by the time you put scales on it, it'll fill out your hand pretty good, but still be small enough to manage.
There you go. That's worth like 5%, ain't it?
At least a cold beer.
Yeah.
Delbert Host, who was a converted Democrat into the Republican Party, and he still does Democrat stuff. He put, I don't know how many people in leadership in Democrats in our state. So especially.
All right, so now I got my handle somewhat rough shaped out. I'll go back to the flat platen. I do a majority of my grinds on a flat platen. We're there for a while. I was going through phases. I go through 3 or 4 months of hollow grinding and then go back to flat grinding. So now I just stick with flat grinding. Okay. Yeah. I've got one or two, and you'll hear some, it's always a big argument. I go back to like bow hunting, the guys that like recurve or compounds don't like crossbows. The guys like, longbows don't like compounds. The only person that cares about how you grind a knife is another knife maker. And most of the time, knife makers don't buy knives off of other makers. So you're not there to satisfy other knife makers. This is a 36 grip. It's an aluminum oxide belt, so it's not lasting as long as it's ceramic, but it's what I got a good deal on. Yeah.
wrenches now, those little boxes, just stick them all together on one side, stick them all together on the other side.
Doesn't work for me like that. All right, so I switched up to a 120. That's nasty. All right, disclaimer on this blade here, it's got a big cold shut in it. So it should be a good user. All right. Let's put this somewhere we won't get all over Travis's anvil. All right, we'll let that sit there and cook a little bit. Start on the next blade. Profile that into more of a little clip point, and we'll see how well it does with the stickers. the thicker areas grinding down and showing the pattern. All right, so when I'm grinding doing stock removal at home, I'll lay out and profile all my blades, cut them out. Then I'll mark the edge with a die or a magic marker and then give them a good center line. When you're grinding a forge blade, you kind of just have to go with the bevels and eyeball it for center until you get to the end and refine it. So usually the first thing I do on a stock removable knife is grind a good steep bevel in to get to my center, and then I can back off that and grind to it so I don't burn up the edge of my blade. But my belt's getting dull right now, so I'm gonna go out in the truck and get a new belt. But y'all can pass that around and look at it. I don't think it's too hot. If it is, you'll turn loose of it.
I won't look at it very long.
Yeah, it's ugly right now. Let me go get a new belt. Now, in my opinion, one of the worst things you can do is to continue to try to grind a knife blade out with a dull belt, because all you end up doing is getting a bunch of waves and scallops in there where the belt's just not cut in some areas, and you're having to put a lot more pressure into it, so you're a lot more prone to making a mistake. Hey, Travis, you have any Windex with ammonia?
Gary, what is that?
This is ferric chloride. It's a mixture 50-50 with ferric chloride and distilled water. Look at you go. Let me go spray this off over in the trash can. Well, we haven't even heat treated this blade yet. Usually I do kind of do it by eye. I do a 5 or 10 minute soak, come out, I'll scrub it off with steel wool to get all the oxides off, put it back in for another 5 or 10 minutes, and I just watch it till it gets to where I like it. I got one right here. All right, with this you can see the code shut, but you can also see the layers. It's not every knife you get that's got a code shut in it, so it's kind of special. There may be a bunch of them today. That's features. That's right. Usually character marks come from the hammer or the grinder. Code shuts come from, they're features. We profile this one out and I'll change blades out. you see how smooth that is? You know, it's a good fresh belt, cuts clean. Where the dull belt makes you do all kinds of waves and you press on it too hard. All right, so the backings on belts make a big difference in the way you grind. When you're doing your rough grinding and you're trying to get your blade profile all set and stuff, a good heavyweight back belt, an X belt or something of that nature is what you need. When you're trying to do finish grinding or maybe move your plunges a bit, you need a good soft belt like a J-Flex belt. So right now what I've done is my plunge is a little bit farther back on this side than this side. So I'll run that belt over the edge of the platen about an eighth of an inch or so, and I'll grind into it and push that platen or that plunge line back even with the other one. You know, the best answer is using a file guide and either file it in or leave that file guide on when you're grinding and get it to the right plunges on both sides. But we're ad hoc in here today.
You're just showing us another way, Gary.
Oh, another way, new features. I'll break that belt over a little bit by bending it. All right, now you can see I brought those plunges. You probably can't see, but the plunges are down, they're equal with each other, and I just got to refine them a little bit more. I'll pass this around as soon as I get it done. Now I will add, it's important to do that pre-heat treat, because once you heat treat your blade, you're real prone if you try to get in tight spots and push that plunge line back to burning the edge of your blade here in this area. So do it pre-heat treat, and then you just got to kind of live with it after heat treat. So. There we go. don't have any acetone here to clean it with. So I'm just making sure I don't have any soap or anything on the blade before I etch it. Like I said, we'll etch it after we heat treat, but I just want to see what the pattern is on this one. All right, where's the other one? It's got me. I know there's nothing more boring or exciting about sitting around watching somebody else grind. So let's pass this knife around.
Gary,
Yes,
does Damascus show better on the flat grind rather than the hollow grind?
I think so. Obviously that's an opinion, and it shows up a lot darker after heat treated as well. So. Well, this one ain't real exciting. We didn't get a lot of movement out of that, but give you an idea. Pass it around and. This acid will eat holes in concrete floors. Ask me how I know. But if you spray a little ammonia on it, it neutralizes it. I had a whole gallon leak out in the floor. By the time I found it, I had a dip in my floor about that high. about that big around, and the hole's all the way to the ground. Yeah, it's funny how that works, isn't it? Damn, that's hot. All right, a real quick note. These blades are going to the iron and the hat today. The last time I did that, I ended up with 4 knives at home I had to finish. They're as is, where is today. I don't really have time to finish any knives right now. So, that, like I say, as is, where is. Crap, forgot something. I put a feature in it a while ago, so I got to grind it back out. Almost done, guys. Ooh, that platinum's hot. I think I got a finger left. I'm 120. Yeah. That usually at 120 is what I heat treat at, and then I come back and start at 120 and go up from there. All right. Now, do y'all want me to heat treat the blades before we do iron on the hat, or do you want to heat treat them on your own? We have to see who gets what. You want to do it on your own? What? What? Hell, I may be leaking. It's been broke 3 times, so you know, it's had a rough life. I was a difficult learner when I was growing up. What? If you keep him out of Florida. Oh, I know. We work the same office. He's a good guy. Wow. I'm gonna call that good for right now. I keep chasing stuff. Good enough to heat treat with. All right, I have to apologize. I couldn't hear if we want to heat treat these blades before we do the iron on the hat or after, or not at all. Well, we can do that. Okay. All right, there's his quench hole. We're in good shape. All right, so I normally, my blades, I bring them up to 120 grit before I go over and heat treat them. Then I bring them back out after tempering, because I go straight out of heat treat into tempering when I do mine at the house. When I come out of tempering, then I start back at 120. I hit 220 on the grinder with a regular platen. Then I go to the rotary platen and start only use Trizac belts from that point and run up to A30. So the beauty of this thing, it lets you do all your thermal cycles and everything really quick. We on manual? Yep. All right.
Cut down.
She's running. Yeah, she's running. See bubbles in it. Okay. So I do 3 thermal cycles when I'm at home. The first thermal cycle, I usually stamp my blade, my maker's mark on it. It's real bright in here, so it's hard to see, but I got a good solid red color all the way through it. And I just let it sit there until it turns back black again. So that's real exciting, but we'll let it cool off. I do that 3 times. Each time, heating it a little less each time.
You let it go cold or just?
I usually let it go just dark black. I guess dark black versus black black. I just let it get dark. So in the color I'm looking for, because you know when I use the forge, I got my thermocouple in it. I tell what the temperature is. What I'm looking for, a good even salmon color, like the pink salmon at Publix or something. You're looking for that good, nice even red color, and that's what I quench at. Gonna practice it again. It looks like we got straight lines in this one too. Where you need it? Oh. See that nice good red color in there? And I'll just let that cool down. We'll do it one more time and then we're ready to quench it. But the neat thing about this, so I'm gonna put my maker's mark on this thing. I can stick it right in there. I can get right up on that ricasso. And I only heat that area up that I need to put my stamp on. So it's really convenient for that. What? Yeah. My Christmas present. Well, we're doing it, we might as well do this one too. So it's funny when you get sideways and you get more surface in the coil, you can feel the magnetic pull of it that's generating. You can also feel the heat coming off the handle. I'm bull in a china shop. All right, so the next time we will quench. And once it cools off, I'll run it through the grinder again. We'll put it in the etchant. That way you can see how much darker it etches compared to a non-heat treated blade. Have any of y'all been down to Alabama, Damascus? Visit Brad Weiss down there? So Brad's down in Jacksonville, Alabama, and they probably the biggest mass-produced Damascus maker in the U.S. They run 5-6 days a week down there with a full crew, and he sells big contract stuff to Case and Kershaw and about everybody else buying. If you see a U.S.-made knife with Damascus in it, usually it's got Brad's Damascus in it. But he's down there, and they've got this forge. It's got 8 natural gas lines flowing into it, with flames coming off the front of it about this far. And I asked him, you know, how long do the guys know between heats that they're ready to go back in forge and distill? And he said, 1 cigarette. If they ever stop smoking, I'm screwed. You can burn a knife blade up here real quick if you're not careful. So another neat thing about heat treatment with induction forge is when you're assembling your hidden tang knife, you know, you need to put a pin in it. That way you got a mechanical bond and you got an adhesive bond. So using the induction forge, you're only heating up the blade and not the tang. Because a lot of times if you do it in a forge and you quench the whole knife, then you got to come back in with a torch and soften up that tang. So 1, so it won't be brittle and break, and 2, you can drill it and put your pin in it. look right. I'm probably gonna need that one. Let's see here. Scrap. All kinds of scrap in here. So if you want to know how hot an induction forge can get, you'll see the sparks fly off this thing in a minute. So it gets plenty hot to burn up steel. That was a valuable piece of steel that Travis had saved for a special project.
Put that on the wall with your name.
We'll let that cool off. That's what I was looking for.
So it's a pedal operation, or is it just...
It's pedal. You got an auto mode, and you got a pedal. So it's in a manual mode right now, and Doug knows about the settings better than I do, but the is manual with a pedal, full on, max power. Okay.
No, you got your power knob turned up to 245.
All right. Hey, he's got me down. I like max.
Not one on the right doesn't do anything.
The what?
One on the right doesn't do anything if it's an automatic.
I don't know. I just use it in manual. It's kind of a unique piece of equipment. You got to have a need for it, or figure out a need, or there's a lot of things you can use it for you never thought about before. Let's see, this thing's what to do with it. I can't find anything. I can swear I had a blade over here and I laid it right here.
Plain sight.
That's what my wife says. You can't find anything. Still a little warm. They switch hands. Whew. Yeah. That's the only belts I brought was a 36 and a 120. Now that the blade's been heat treated, you gotta be real careful not to burn the edge. And I can't dunk it in water because I'm afraid to crack the blade, so I'm trying to rush it, but Switch hands. I can't hear you.
Concerning belt, tension belt. Can you use that on them before you?
You mean like conditioning belt?
Yeah, conditioning belt.
Yeah, you can use it. I just usually go up to higher grit than the finishing belt is. All right, whenever that cools off a little bit more, we'll put it in the etchant so you can see how dark it etches. And this right here is going. You'll see some discoloration on the etch here because these gloves got stuff on them, but it'll give you an idea of what it looks like when you get it finished out. My arm socks are getting hot. 20 doesn't show very well, but. All right, this is ready to go to the iron in the hat. Pass it around. You won't win that, but see if it's hot. Yes, it's brittle enough. You know, if you could drop it, it could break. Do you see that? Yeah, you know why? They did it wrong. It makes good TV. I think some of these guys don't judge by colors and they just smoke it, you know. I know 3 out of the 4 of us that quenched, it was a sand mine, which is really critical in quenching. If you overheat it, you'll blow the layers apart, and 3 out of the 4 blow the layers apart.
Hot.
That's hot. All right, folks. I guess once this cools off, or we'll go out there and put it on the table and see if it melts a hole in the table. We'll be ready to go. I need to buy some tickets, though. That's it? Yeah.